I just was clicking buttons until it worked.
Oh, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being willing to do this today, Mr. Philbrick. Go ahead, boys.
That's fine. Go ahead. Somebody ask a question.
Introduce yourself, Ethan.
I'm Ethan Maddox.
I'm Malcolm Hughes, and I'm Jonah Mitchell.
We just finished reading the book Freak the Mighty, and we watched the movie The Mighty, and Jonah.
Can you hear them?
Yes, I can hear them fine.
Good.
What inspired you to write?
Well, I started out, what grade is this? Is this?
Seventh.
Seventh grade language arts at York Middle School.
I started writing when I was in 6th grade. I went to Rye Elementary School in Rye, New Hampshire, not too far from where you are. And I loved to read. I was very sort of outdoorsy kid and played sports and everything, but I liked to read, and somehow I got it stuck in my mind that I could write too. So I started writing short stories and sending them out to magazines when I was in 6th grade. Of course, nobody published any of them because I barely knew what I was doing. But I sort of stuck with it and never gave up on the writing part and kept writing through junior high school and then later on until I finally got a book published when I was in my 20s. This particular story was, you guys may already know this, was inspired by a couple of kids who lived in our neighborhood in Portsmouth.
You want to ask them about that?
Yeah.
So what inspired them?
Did you ever get to meet them?
Yeah, I used to see these kids around town because we lived not far from the middle school. And then, just by coincidence, the little guy, the guy who inspired the character of Kevin or Freak in the book, we got to know his mother, and she invited us to come over for dinner. She was a really good cook. And that's who opened the door, was this little kid I'd seen around town. And he immediately was on my case to see if I knew as many big words as he did. He knew I was a writer. And I knew right away how smart he was. He was probably way smarter than I was. And he was interested in science fiction and robotics and the Arthurian legends, much like the character in the book.
How long did it take you to write Freak the Mighty?
Well, I mean, there's two answers to that, and they're both true. One is all my life, because I've been, working at writing for a long, long time. And the other is a few months. I started it in the spring one year and finished it in the middle of the summertime. I'd write 4 or 5 pages every morning, and then I'd go fishing for striper and drift down the river and think about what I was going to catch, and then and what I was going to write as well. And then the next day I'd write it, and so it took a few months.
What's the biggest fish you've ever caught?
Well, we were hooked up on a tuna off of Boone Ledge this summer, but we never got it to the boat, so that probably would have been the biggest fish I ever caught. But aside from that, I've caught tarpon, which are a southern fish down in Florida where we spend the winters. I've caught tarpon that are maybe 175 pounds, and actually got them pretty close to the boat before I could unhook them.
That's cool. How many books have you written?
I've probably written, counting the books that haven't been published, which is a few, I've probably written pretty close to 50 novels.
What's your favorite one that you've written?
Well, once again, there's a 2-part answer, and that's Freak the Mighty, because it's introduced me to so many readers from all around the world, and whatever book I'm working on right now, I have to, when I sit down in the morning and work on a book, I have to think it's going to be my best book yet. And sometimes when I get it done, I realize it's pretty good, but it's not the best thing I've ever written. But while I'm working on it, I have to think it's going to be my best book, or I wouldn't be able to sit down and get writing. So it's Freak the Mighty and whatever book I'm working on now.
What kind of genres do you like to write?
Well, I like writing for young adults. I get a kick out of that, and I can pretty much do what I want, write the kind of story I want. And I also, for adults, write thrillers. real page turners about suspenseful things, and I enjoy those too, because I enjoy the discipline of knowing how to structure a story so that the readers will want to read it. You know, that you'll want to keep on turning the page and finding out what happens next.
What's your favorite genre to read?
I guess lately I've been reading more suspense than anything else in fiction. I just read a really interesting book that's nonfiction called The Wave, which is about giant waves at sea and also the crazy surfers who try to catch rides on these 100-foot waves. And that taught me a lot I didn't know about how giant waves can form in the ocean and the damage they can do. And I found the whole thing very interesting. So I read all kinds of stuff, I guess I'd say.
Who was your favorite author as a kid?
I'm not sure I had one favorite author as a kid. I liked all kinds of stories. I read a lot of science fiction when I was your age. Not so much anymore, I'm not quite sure why. So I liked The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, who is actually still alive now. I think he's in his late 80s or early 90s.
I didn't realize he's still alive.
Yeah, he is, believe it or not, and still writing a little bit. He probably would have been my favorite writer at the time. I read his short stories, which were all really cool science fiction kinds of stories.
We're going to study him this year.
Yeah, well then you guys will discover what like him. And I read, Ursula Le Guin when I was that age, and I read I loved the Jungle books by Rudyard Kipling, which were a series of short stories. I don't know why it appealed to me, but the idea of living out in the jungle or forest with a bunch of animals probably had something to do with the fact that I had 3 younger brothers.
How often do you get to write?
I try to write every day, although I'm not always successful. I mean, I try to write in the mornings and then do all my errands later on in the day, or go fishing, which is really the best thing to do. So I try to do it on a real regular basis, 5 or 6 days a week. When I'm working on a book, when I'm almost done with it, sometimes I'll work longer than that. But normally, I write for 3 or 4 hours a day.
Do you like the movie Freak the Mighty?
I liked it. It's not exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to be exactly like the book. And they changed it, which they always seem to do when they're making a film. But I can't complain, because at least they kept the characters pretty much the same, even though they changed some of the circumstances. So I really, like I say, I can't complain about it. It was really cool seeing it made into a film. And seeing all those big stars speaking lines that I've written right here at this very desk that I'm sitting at right now.
It's funny, these kids don't know those stars anymore. They don't know who Meatloaf is or Sharon Stone.
They must know who James Gandolfini is.
Well, that's true. No? Do you guys know
Tony
them?
Soprano.
No? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, well, they might be too young for that one, too.
Yeah, that could be. You're right. It's all fading away.
Life is moving on.
It's time for a remake.
Yes. All right. I didn't mean to take that from you guys. Do you have any more questions?
Do you have any advice for us as middle school writers?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm not sure how useful it's going to be, but I'd say if you're going to be a writer, the most important thing you can do other than writing, so that you get better at it. It's no different than athletics in the sense that you have to practice to get good at it. The best advice I could give you is to become good listeners. Writers have to absorb stories from around them and get ideas for who people are so that they become realistic when you write them as stories or screenplays or theater plays or whatever version of writing you use. But really, good writers are good listeners. When people start to tell them something about themselves, they shut up and listen and pay attention. And sometimes the writer's like a fly on the wall, watching all the things that are going on and just getting a handle on who people are and how they behave and what would be realistic and what would be fantastical. And the other thing is to keep reading. It's very important for writers to read and get an idea about how other people are putting stories together. And the other thing is to not give up. If you're serious about wanting to be a writer, it's easy to get discouraged and not finish something. But you sort of have to develop a stubborn of sticking to it, and that will take you a long way.
How's the Adventures of Homer Fig going for you? It won some awards in Maine?
Well, it won the Maine Lupine Award,
Yeah.
and it also won a Newbery honor.
Nice, nice.
So it'll be out in paperback in January, I believe. So you'll probably see it in the book clubs and the book fairs. I would think you guys might be interested in that story because it takes place, or it starts in Maine. It's about a couple of brothers from a part of Maine that's further north than York. But nevertheless, that's where it starts, and that's where it ends. So I hope you give it a shot.
I have the book, guys, if you want to read it, and it's in the library. Just got a lot of copies. Now, Mr. Philbrick, we've been videotaping this while you've been on. Would it be okay if I put this videotape on my website?
Yes,
Is that
that's
okay?
quite.
All right.
Yep.
All right. What do you think, boys? Do you have anything else to ask him?
How tall were Max and Kevin?
Well, in reality, Max was taller than I am. I'm 6'1", so I'd say he was about 6'2", and very broad-shouldered, big kid, and big when he was in junior high school, full size. And Kevin was never more than about 34 or 35 inches tall. Might have been even a little shorter. He was very, very small because he had something called Morquio syndrome, which meant that he was never going to grow to be any bigger than the size he was when he was about 2.5 years old. So they were quite a pair. I mean, you would have noticed them just like I did had you been around to see them walking the streets of Portsmouth.
That's
Wow. Yeah.
What do you think, boys? Did you ask all the questions you wanted to?
Yeah.
Well, we can't thank you enough for taking time out.
No, it was my pleasure, and you know, maybe these kids deserve to have the rest of the day off.
Right.
I agree.
Now we have to do the rest. This is one group's project, so now the rest of the groups are going to go. Yeah.
All right, well,
Thank
good
you.
luck with all of those projects, and I'll say what I always say, which is keep reading.